Hi, I'm Beth Wilson. I'm an educator at the National Air and Space Museum and one of the hosts of STEM in 30, a television program for middle school students produced at the museum. Today we are doing our book chat, and I am really excited to let you all know that we are joined by the writer, illustrator, and one of the characters featured in the graphic novel Astronauts: Women on the Final Frontier. Today, we are joined by NASA astronaut Mary Cleave, author Jim Adanov. Oh, I'm going to mess it up. Just say it for me, Jim.
Ottaviani.
Ottaviani. Say all the letters. I knew I was going to mess that up. And illustrator Maris Wicks. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
For those of you who are watching, please submit your questions and let us know where you're watching from. We are going to focus today on pioneering women, especially during the shuttle era. To get started, I'm going to ask the first couple of questions. Mary, you were in the second astronaut class that featured women astronauts. Before then, there was only one woman who had gone into space, and she was a Russian cosmonaut. When did you decide that you wanted to go into space?
Well, because I liked airplanes. I wanted a career in aviation, but at my age, the only career path that was really open was I wanted to be an airline stewardess, but I was too short. So I went to graduate school. And then when they started hiring scientists and engineers to go work in space, I got a chance to fly. But I was really more interested in getting the capability to fly in a really nice jet because you train in T-38s. And I thought that'd be great fun.
So it was really the flying the airplane and not necessarily being in a rocket.
No, I mean, the space flight was great, but I would have been happy just flying in the airplanes myself.
Jim, what was it about Mary's story in particular that you thought would make a great graphic novel?
Oh, it's actually hard to choose just one thing, but maybe the thing that I would focus on, or that initially got me going, was the idea that she was both an eyewitness to and a part of this sort of historic shift or progress as we brought more people into space. I spent a lot of time reading oral histories. NASA does a great job of making oral histories of many, maybe even most astronauts available. Searching through and trying to figure out who might be a good main character for the book. And when I got to Mary's oral history, her sense of humor and, again, all the things that she had accomplished combined to make me want to reach out and say, hey, are you interested in doing something crazy like participating in a comic book about science and engineering and astronauts? And luckily she said yes.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun.
Maris, now I know we're going to be taking a look at some of your doodles as we go along here today, but tell me a little bit about your process when you're choosing these projects. And I know that you've worked with Jim on more than one occasion, but what's that thought process that you go through?
So I guess first is that I love comics and I love science, and to smoosh them together, like my two favorite things on this planet, is my dream job, but it's also just something I feel really passionately about. So my first book that I ever worked on was with Jim. It's called Primates, The Fearless Science of Jane Goodall, Diane Fossey, and Berete Galdikas. And it was fantastic to work together. And I've done solo stuff as well. And my solo things tend to be a lot more cartoony, a lot more silly, a lot more fart jokes. I'm sorry, not sorry. But after I finished Primates, Jim has such an incredible way of weaving together intricate history and stories in a way that's so efficient. Because if you've read either of the books we've worked on before, there's a lot in there, and Astronauts is 160 pages, and we cover, two kind of big eras of space travel. So A, I just love working with Jim's scripts. B, for me, cartoons are really accessible. And a lot of times stories told in cartoon format resonate with me. And I know that I'm not alone. I know that a lot of other people gravitate towards cartoons or art as a way to learn a story. So that's like really why I do what I do and why I love it. And my style, I'll maybe talk a little bit about later. I draw the way that I draw, but I've been practicing for 38 years. I think there's a nice simplicity in trying to portray people in a relatively simple way. And when I say simple, I just mean like a lot of times my characters have 2 dots for eyes instead of like realistic pupils. And there's no right or wrong way to draw characters. It's just the way I like to.
Well, we have a lot of people watching from Massachusetts, Oregon, Indianapolis, New Jersey, Ireland, Virginia, Sarasota, Florida, Maryland, Texas, St. Louis, Buffalo, New York City, and Pennsylvania. Keep submitting those questions. We want to hear from you. We'll get to as many as we can. We do have some questions to begin with. Mary, is there some advice that you would give young women who are interested in a career in aviation?
Yes. First of all, the opportunities are there for you, which are marvelous. If you are interested in flying incredible airplanes and in flying spaceships eventually, the vast majority of astronauts graduated from the Naval Academy and were naval aviators. So that's probably the highest probability if you can get a nomination into the Naval Academy and fly in the Navy in airplanes. The Air Force Academy has quite a few now, and there are more and more opportunities for women. You can go the civilian track. The military track gives you the opportunity to fly in more exotic kinds of airplanes than you would if you follow the traditional civilian route. So most of these guys are test pilots. So.
And there's a follow-up to that. Somebody would like to know, are there any specific people that you either mentored or that either inspired or mentored you?
I think through my whole life, I've been really lucky because starting in high school, I had incredible science teachers. My physics teacher was incredible. He had us doing all these incredible things. All the other teachers were very irritated with him because we were running up and down the halls doing our science experiments and throwing balls out of the school second floor window and stuff. But he just got us so excited about the laws of physics. It was just incredible. And we established a scholarship in his name at our high school. And when I started working with all of his other students, it was amazing what his students did coming out of that high school, just because he got us so excited about the laws of physics. And then I had great coaches, high school sports coaches, and they taught me about teamwork. And that was very important too.
And we've got somebody who would like to know, for both Jim and Maris, who has inspired you all to do what you do?
You want me to go?
Well,
Jim,
we start with Jim. We'll start with Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just pointing the other way. Gosh, who has inspired me? Yeah, I suppose that the same as Marriott, so many people. I've actually had a bunch of different careers so far. I started as an engineer, a nuclear engineer, and also worked as a librarian. And I would say that my family, has always been supportive of any weird twist and turn that I might take, and always thought, well, that might be a good idea. So that's really helpful. I too had a very inspiring and interesting physics teacher in high school. We did a lot of hands-on experiments, and one of the things that taught me, as Mary was describing her experience, was how difficult it is to actually do a good experiment. And when you enter school and you're presented with results in textbooks, everything seems so neat and clear and well defined and already decided. And then you try to replicate some of these things, and it's really hard to do something good. So there's all the teachers there that I would say have brought me to the path. And I was a science fiction reader as a kid, still am as an adult. And so thinking about, the possibilities, especially of space travel, I would attribute a lot of that and a lot of the, sense of wonder and sense of curiosity about what's going on beyond our planet to a lot of that reading. I could just go on with a zillion names, but I'll just leave it to Maris. Maris has specific people she can talk about.
Well, it's true though, right? Like when you start to think about who inspired you, it's kind of like this long chain of events, and there's all these things that I always think about it like it's stages, because I grew up in a family where my interest in science and art were definitely fed. My mom, I really like nature, so I was that kid that would spend time on the playground looking at ants for a half hour, because that's just my jam. And I also was the same kind of kid that would always be looking up at the sky at night. And my mom recognized that, so I had lots of field guides. I had a really great I still have it, glow in the dark guide to astronomy. So I stay up past your bedtime with a flashlight in bed, reading my favorite books. So having people that recognize those within your immediate area is really important, but then having teachers that see that. And I was a pretty good student in elementary school. Middle school and high school were particularly challenging because I couldn't keep up with the workload. I am super hands-on. I love science and I loved labs and everything, but as soon as there was testing and reading, I would bomb tests. And it was so infuriating because I was really passionate about the subject matter, but I don't test well. And I had a physics teacher that recognized that he was like, I know you get this. I see you in class, you're engaged, but why do you keep failing these tests? So he worked with me to help me understand better. And a lot of it was just understanding how disjointed our subjects were. So I was able to understand algebra through my physics class, but nobody made those connections for me until then. So really seeing when people step up and go the effort to help. And it's not that I even asked for the help, because I was a teenager. I was like, I don't want to ask for help. But later you start to have a lot more lasting influence. So I had some professors in college, both an English professor, and I had a professor in illustration that was a comic book professor. And I went to a college where you could take a class in comics. It was awesome. You don't have to, but it was really cool. But those were mentorship that happened over more than a year, in terms of the English professor that really pushed me to write, because he was like, hey, you're good at this writing thing. And nobody had ever told me that before. And then the comics teacher kind of just opened my eyes to visual narrative and how incredibly moving it can be to tell stories. So yeah, it's hard. And then even when I started out, Jim was a huge source of inspiration to me, because I saw his work and I was like, oh my gosh, someone's making science comics. He's doing what I want to do. So and I'm constantly even inspired by my peers and people younger than me. It's not necessarily an age hierarchy. It's just seeing people who are passionate and willing to share that passion is usually where I seek my biggest sources of inspiration.
And I will remind everyone that we are actually watching Maris doodle live as we go on with the broadcast. We have people watching in Michigan, Washington, Ukraine, Alabama, Utah. Keep submitting those questions. Jim, I've got another question that's come in here for you. During this time where a lot of us are stuck at home, as a writer, how important do you think it is to journal?
I would be lying if I said it's really, really important, because I only rarely do it. Mm-hmm. On March 13th, I decided to start writing stuff down every day, though, because that's the day that I ducked into this cave and have kind of stayed there mostly since then. A lot of people find it tremendously valuable, though. And especially if you're going to be writing about your own lived experience, and there's a whole swath of comics creators out there who have done really interesting and entertaining memoir type of books, then for sure, do it. But I think, as Maris described, there's no one way to get to the creative spot that you need to be. And so, like I said, I'm not a regular journaler. Sometimes it's only one line, even right now, for any given day or period. But hey, go for it. I think it's writing in general, writing every day something is actually really important, as is reading every day. So I think those are the two main things to have on your daily agenda, is to write something and to read something. It doesn't have to be journaling though.
Mary, somebody has stated there's a lopsided gender balance in engineering. What do you think might change education to attract and retain more very smart young women, especially in the sciences?
Yeah, we've been working trying to get the percentage of female engineers that are working up. I'm an civil environmental engineer, so civil engineering. We've worked on a lot of things. There appears to be a problem after the students graduate, because a lot of the jobs in the field are not kid friendly, and the positions don't have good leave policies and those kinds of things. And it's not just a problem in engineering, it's a problem in a lot of different fields where you can really work on the educational portion of it and even all that out. And I had some fabulous engineering professors there. I wouldn't have been an engineer unless the dean of the College of Engineering at Utah State University didn't tell me you wouldn't be a good scientist, but you would be a good engineer. I mean, he literally recruited me. But the problem is, and they see what's happening to the women that go into the field, and they don't see a position they'd like to be in. And that's what we need to work on, I think.
And Maris, for you, again, this is sort of a follow-up to the question that was asked of Jim. A lot of us are home right now. Do you need special tools to paint and draw, or will anything do?
Anything will do. Hopefully parents don't get mad at me. I'm like, the wall is your canvas. No, I'm just kidding. Don't draw on the walls. I started drawing as soon as I could hold a crayon, and I drew on every blank piece of paper in my house. So like envelopes, like we were talking, Beth and I were talking before, like just like brown paper bags, like whatever is around. And I do think it's nice to keep a sketchbook, but it's by no means a rule for being an artist. And it doesn't matter what paper I drew on, and I still do online paper sometimes. Sometimes I like having a material that I can feel like I can go through a little faster because it makes me less precious with my drawings. Because when you get that nice sketchbook and it's all like blank and the page, like it's like, don't be pressured about it. What Jim was saying, like sometimes it's nice to just, I don't even want to say draw every day, make a mark on something every day. Like it doesn't have to be this, well, for me, like I never want art to be this arduous or like difficult task. I like to let go of what I'm making. And a lot of times I'll just make art that makes me laugh. So what I do right now is like, I have a field, like the North American Field Guide to Birds, and I'll just like try and find the funniest bird in there and draw that. Cause like sometimes you don't just want to like pull everything. It's exhausting to always use your imagination. So I went through and like the owls are particularly hilarious. Like, they made the snowy owl so grumpy, but like, do what sparks joy, what makes you happy. And like, if that's finger painting, that's great. If it's sculpting, like we have like Lego and Play-Doh. And when I say we, like it's me and my adult partner. I don't have children, but like we have like stuff to play with. He's an engineer. So, but we have stuff to creatively play with. And like I, for a long time, I used to make like stuffed animals. Like I did soft sculpture. I like quilting. Like again, hands-on type of person. And it couldn't even be like cooking or baking. Like maybe that's the way you like being creative, but it's really nice to do something just for the sake of making something, either for yourself or to share with someone else. And like for no reason other than that. And that's another thing is I do tell young people, I'm like, you're completely allowed to draw just for you. You don't have to share it with an audience. Like I choose to share what I make with an audience because that's part of my job. But drawing and journaling can be incredibly personal, and that can also be important as well. It's not always just a share. So
Yeah, I think
go ahead, Jim.
That was probably the key thing, and that's Maris answered the question the way I should have, in part, in that the point of journaling is to do it, not to publish it, not to make it pretty, even necessarily for yourself. But the fact of doing the thing is the real important. And if that's what it takes to get you going, definitely.
I have been, during this time at home, building very small sculptures to put inside of Altoid tins. Because
awesome.
I eat a lot of mints, and this is my little octopus's garden in an Altoid box.
Awesome.
So there's all sorts of stuff. Maris, we're getting a lot of love coming in about your drawing live. So thank you very much. We've got people watching in Arizona, Miami, South Carolina, Dallas, North Carolina, Germany, Greece, Raleigh, the Space Coast in Florida. So keep those questions coming. A lot of the stuff that is highlighted in the book is actually in this next question from Ohio for you, Mary. Was it difficult being one of the very early female astronauts, and how was that challenging?
Well, that's hard to answer because I was never a male astronaut, so I don't compare it to. But the guys were great. I mean, these poor guys, when we started flying, we'd go into flight lines and there were no women's rooms, and these incredible test pilots would have to stand guard outside a men's room so we could make a pit stop. I mean, just stuff like that. And they were very supportive. And so I think that because they were so committed to helping us, it made our jobs a lot easier. And we're still all friends. I mean, which is amazing, because we haven't been together for a very long time. So
there was a mention in the book that for a long time there weren't locker rooms for female astronauts.
No. And in fact, when I got my custom flight boots, they sent them off to have them made after they measured my feet, and the company sent them back because they thought it was a joke, because they made boots they didn't have to make boots for kids, is what they said. So
we have a question from Bryce, and this is for both Maris and Jim. What comes first, the pictures or the words?
Well, so the process of making a book when we collaborate is typically a lot of research, a lot of drafting things and laying things out to structure the story. And so what I will deliver to Maris is you could almost refer to it as an instruction manual for making a comic book. So it's writing that comes first in one sense, but in another sense, while I'm writing, sometimes I will put together a stream of dialogue and then think about the images that will go with that. Oftentimes, though, it's an image that sparks the idea for a scene, or you want to get to a certain image for the book. It's comics after all, so the images are what people are there to enjoy, at least as much as the words. So I would say probably, I don't know why I'm trying to put a percentage on this, but maybe 60% of the time I'll be thinking in terms of dialogue and caption, and then working with the images that I know will work with that. Other 40% of the time, it'll be image that comes first. I want this image followed by this image, followed by this image, and then fitting things together. And then Maris gets her hands on it and starts that process all over again, almost. I mean,
Yeah, and similar to kind of what you're saying about like how comics is the medium we're choosing to tell the story. So Jim can't not think about what would make good scenes for the book. So there is, when you're making comics, this intrinsically like visual thinking. But yeah, I mean, the process wise, even with my own personal work, I need a script or a really solid outline before I start drawing. I might have already done a lot of doodles, and like when Astronauts became a thing, when Jim told me about it and it was pitched and it was going to happen, I think I right out the gate started learning about Mary and just doing sketches about like doodles of what cartoon Mary would look like before I even had a script. But that was mostly the research phase. But for the most part, like it's a relatively rigorous process, because from Jim's script, I will thumbnail the whole book, which basically just means little tiny sketches of each page, the whole thing. And it looks really loose, like stick figure loose. But we want to make sure that it flows well. And it's a lot easier to proofread a comic when it's in that sketch phase than a script. I think you can just catch a lot of visual things. Page turns are another thing in comics. Like there's a couple scenes in Astronauts where you turn the page and there's a reveal, whether it's a double page spread or the pacing of the story. So once all of that gets approved by our editor, I can do the pencils, that gets approved. And Jim's looking at this too. And I think Mary looked at a bunch of the stages as well, the inks and then the colors. But it's this very constructive way that we build the final book. So when in Astronauts, we actually ask for a spread at the end to show the process. And you can see, it's one of my favorite scenes where Mary's lifting up pieces of plywood because she's studying the cryptogrammic crust and there's a snake under one of them, spoiler. But like, I told you I was that nature kid. So I was actually really excited to like draw a desert scene with terrestrial animals, even though in a space book. But we talk about a little bit about how the comic takes its shape. But yeah, and I don't know if it's different for each project too. Cause like sometimes I will have the image in my head for a book that I'm writing and illustrating, and I'll have very, very descriptive, like it will start as sketches and then it eventually evolves into a book, but it really depends. And especially when collaboration with a writer, it's more of a writing and then the art.
Mary, someone would like to know what was your favorite food in space and what it was like to eat in space. And I want to follow up with that because there's a great section in the book that talks about the aha moment with tortillas.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, that's because we flew with the first Mexican national. Rodolfo was on our crew. And so they had never flown tortillas before, but people like to eat sandwiches. I mean, they're good because you're working hard and it's good to be able to grab something and just eat it, just like it is down here. So all of a sudden we figured out that tortillas work much better in space because you can wrap, like peanut butter and jelly will just squirt out because there's no gravity holding it all together. But a tortilla, you can actually eat it on the go without a big mess, which is a real advantage. So that was Rodolfo's real contribution without even trying to the space program. But I personally, I like peanut M&Ms. And so on my second flight, we had a wave off because of weather in California. And so you get to eat your leftover snacks and stuff. That's what you live on. And so it was a full day of just looking out the window, taking pictures and peanut M&Ms. And that was great, really great.
You still like them after having to eat them for a whole day straight?
I still like them.
Hey, Mary, I should let you know, I go through a party-sized bag of peanut M&Ms about every 3 months. They're like one of my favorite, like 3 p.m. handful of peanut M&Ms. So
they're a good pick-me-up. Yep. Some sugar and some protein. Somebody just commented that they loved your answer, Mary. I was never a male astronaut. Someone would like to know, and it's kind of cute, so I'll ask all of you this. Star Trek or Star Wars? Jim, let's start with you.
I gotta say Star Wars because I've maybe watched 3 episodes of Star Trek in my life, which is an embarrassing thing to say in most comics and geeks and engineering circles. I've watched a bunch of the movies, but yeah, I guess it's got to be Star Wars.
Maris, what about you?
This is like whenever people ask me Marvel or DC, I'm like, I like both for 2 very different reasons. I really love Star Wars for like the action adventure, and I really love like the political stuff in Star Trek. Like I see them as 2 very different entities, except for the fact they both took place in space. So yeah, sorry, I'm that person. I'm like both of them.
Mary, what about you? Do you have a favorite?
No, I'm both of them too. And then I grew up reading science fiction books, so I like it all. Stranger in a Strange Land, Heinlein, that was my guy when I was a kid.
And Mary, actually, Star Trek, especially Nichelle Nichols, played a big role in recruitment. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, she was part of the recruiting when they first opened up the shuttle program. They were looking for a different kind of astronaut. They were not only were they looking for test pilots like the Apollo guys were, but they were also looking for scientists and engineers to do research in space. And so they were trying to figure out a way to attract the attention of this different population of people, and she helped them with that a lot.
I saw that in the book as well. It's a really good book for middle school students. So we've got actually some comments. Okay, so we have. I'll wait for the comments to the end. We have a question for all 3 of you. What made you want to have a certain career? And what was the inspiration of studying that? And Maris, I'm going to start with you first because you had, I'm a little jealous, you had comics in college. So
my career path, so let me say that when you get a degree in illustration, it does by no means mean you're going to work in that profession. I spent over 15 plus years in informal education. I love museum ed. So like Beth, it's like awesome job. I worked at the
we switched.
Yeah. yeah. And I still did comics the whole time, but my day job for a long time was working in education. And I spent 8 years at the New England Aquarium as a program educator. And prior to that, I also worked at the Providence Children's Museum through a program called AmeriCorps, which is a really cool program that is basically volunteer service, but you learn really awesome skills. I also will acknowledge it's an incredible privilege to get to go to school for art. I had a family that was really supportive of it because it's a lot. It's a 4-year program, and I will say that art school is difficult, but in a good way. 8-hour classes where you draw for 8 hours straight 3 times a week on top of your regular course load. Like that amount of practice for that amount of time really did something. I was so fortunate to be able to do that for 4 years without having to worry to work a job on top of that. Because once I got out of school, working a full-time job, 40-hour week, and then doing comics on nights and weekends, like when I did Primates, it took me 4 years because I was doing it on nights and weekends. So I don't know, I ended up here in the best way possible. And I know I did take steps along the way, but a lot of times, and I talk about this, when you see a project or someone's career, you don't see all the things they did or all the things they never did. I mean, my last year of college, I got certified to be an EMT because I thought I was going to work on the back of an ambulance for my job. And I tried it and it was too hard to be completely honest. And I was like, I can make the decision. I'm going to go work on a farm instead because I don't have to resuscitate apples. So it's weird. Like you think about your trajectory and there's decisions you make, and every time that there's a project that, like a job I didn't get or a project I didn't get, it's not a bad thing. It just means something else happened in its place. And like, I like that feeling. And it can be frustrating when you're applying for a job or when there's this thing you think you want. But sometimes you don't end up wanting it and you want another thing. So it's important to be able to explore and to push yourself and to learn new things. And it's okay to want to learn a bunch of different things. All the things I learned, even the EMT job, helped me do what I do now. So
Jim, what about you?
Which career, I guess, is the first. So
let's talk about writing since we're talking about the book.
Yeah. Well, they actually sort of flow through in a weird way, but not at all intentional. So I'm actually not going to talk just about writing. Probably the one thing that I can pin my interest in nuclear engineering to was a really cool article in the National Geographic with fabulous illustrations by an illustrator named Baron Story, talking about inertial confinement fusion. And I thought that sounded like the coolest thing possible. Blast a bunch of lasers at a pellet of fuel and create the conditions inside the sun and use that to generate electricity. I want in. We're still hoping that can happen someday. That's one of those things in engineering where the engineers keep saying, it'll be ready in about 20 years. And they've been saying that since about 1960 or something. So not going to hold our breath. Slid into librarianship because it turned out that I liked the reading and discovering through reading aspect of research. I was better at that than I was at the actual hands-on stuff. And slowly ended up finding myself in comics, in part because I wanted comic books that didn't exist. I'd been reading comics most of my life, liked superhero stuff, liked fantasy stuff, liked science fiction stuff, but there wasn't anything about scientists, really. No biographies, no history. And kept waiting for it to show up on the rack at the comic book store or in the library or wherever. Never did. Finally looked in the mirror one day and said, maybe you're the guy who's supposed to do that thing. And it turned out that I'm allowed to do it. So they feed into each other, but yeah, it's not at all a sort of linear, this one thing happened and I ended up doing this thing that I get to enjoy.
And Mary, you pretty much touched on how you got into where you are, but you've had a lot of interesting jobs as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you did after you were an astronaut? You continued to work for NASA.
Oh yeah, well, I started out as an environmental engineer, and so civil environmental, and so working in space. I mean, the great thing about working in a spaceship is you get to work on experiments. Like I worked with 3M growing crystals. Those guys never would have hired me to grow crystals in a lab because I didn't have the right background, but they were delighted to work with me, and train me so I could build them on a spaceship for them. So that was a great part of that. But then when I looked out the window in my 2 space flights, I could see the difference in the planet. And I thought, I better get back to work because we're having a very huge impact on this planet on a short period of time. So I wanted to get into environmental spacecraft, was going to go to Pasadena to the Jet Propulsion Lab to work with those guys. But my parents were getting older. And my older sister said, Mary, can't you get a job on the East Coast? Mom and Dad are getting old. I need some help back here. So I took a job at Goddard. Worked out great because I got to work on a project with guys. We were measuring all the plants on the planet every 48 hours. It was right. I mean, I couldn't have picked a better project for my background if I'd tried, and it was very serendipitous.
Maris, a lot of people want to know, what is your favorite thing to draw?
Oh, well, remember I told you I like had all those crazy jobs? It's really hard to pick a favorite thing. So, I will say that like when I don't know what to draw, I told you that I like to go look at nature guides. I do usually defer back to animals and nature. It's just like my happy place. So, and I also really like cats. So usually I'll just be like, you can't go wrong with cats. But snails and slugs are another big one. If anybody watching this follows me on Twitter or Instagram, you know that I like to draw slug comics on Mondays for Mollusk Monday. But yeah, a lot of times it's what brings me joy, and that tends to be nature and underwater stuff. I also, if anybody else knows me, knows that I like to be underwater. So, but yeah, I guess yeah.
So we're coming up on time, but we've got a couple more questions. And first of all, Jim, everybody online thinks that you need to watch more Star Trek. I just wanted to point that out. Mary, Michaela
Making a note.
would like to know what was the view like from space? And in the book, you talk about putting a sort of a shield over your head and looking for stars. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you go around the Earth every hour and a half. So one thing when you're working in space you need to think about is lighting, because it gets dark and you go into night and then you come into day every 45 minutes. So during the daytime you can look at the Earth and take pictures. At night you can look at the stars and take pictures. But there's a light on behind you in the spacecraft, so you have to dark adapt your eyes. So there's a bag you put around the window, you get in the bag, and that allows you to sit in there so you can dark adapt your eyes. So when you look out, you can see. And there, if you're above the atmosphere in a spaceship, you can see so much more. It's like, it's like the ultimate in no light pollution. You can look up and actually see all this stuff, and it's really exciting. Unless you have to find your navigation stars, then it's a little nerve-wracking.
And to follow up on that, with Jim and Maris, is there an image from space that you have looked at to get inspiration? And I'm going to start with Maris on that one, since she's drawing furiously there.
No, it's
Maybe
okay. That's what I normally do for work. I think as a kid, and it's funny because this has been iconic for a long time, it's like the blue marble. It's like seeing the Earth from the moon and seeing the Earth so small. And then I'd seen this before, but Mary was lovely to remind me of it. She sent us, right after we met her, it's Saturn close up and a little tiny dot, and it says you are here, and Earth is that little tiny dot. So it almost drives home this even broader, like I love feeling insignificant in the universe, and I'd like, insignificance maybe not the right word, but like I love feeling tiny. It's like really comforting to me. So any kind of imagery from space usually evokes that, like, oh, I like love it. It's like wrapping the universe up as like a warm blanket for me. And I know sometimes for other people it's a really scary feeling, but for me it just like, it makes me feel more together with everybody, but it also makes me feel that sense of awe and wonder. And I'm in love with like those things. So yeah, sorry, long answer.
Jim, what about you? Is there something that you look up into space and you think, wow, that's really inspiring?
Yeah, I would second the Earthrise type photo. That there's more than one of them, but the Earth out there in this velvety blackness is inspirational. But that's of course nothing that I've seen myself with my own eyes. It's only through other people's eyes, through eyes of folks like Mary, that you get to see those things. So for me, this sounds so cliche. I'm not sure I should even say it, but like just the Milky Way, just seeing the arc of our own galaxy out there is fabulous and inspiring. There's so much that we don't know. And apparently there's a black hole right in the middle. Who knew? That's pretty cool. And then a little bit closer to home, the first views that you ever take with your own eyes through a telescope and all of a sudden Jupiter resolves not into this little fuzzy dot, but this thing with bands and moons around it. And if you wait until the next day, the moons are in a different place. That's pretty spectacular. And I'll never forget the first time, Mother, if you're out there watching, sorry if I'm telling tales out of school here, but I brought a telescope home. We pointed it at Saturn, and I don't think she could believe her eyes. It was like, I think it's broken. I think something's messed up because it doesn't look quite. It's like, nope, those are the rings. You're seeing the rings with your own eyes.
That's great.
And that's a remarkable feeling.
That is a very special feeling. And hopefully when we open back up soon, the museum does have a public observatory that we would love for people to come down and view. We do solar viewing during the day, and to see that stuff with your own eyes is really amazing. We are out of time, but I want to end up with a couple of comments. Melissa would like to say she is in awe of you, Mary. Thank you for your persistence in following your dreams and paving the way for future generations of women. And another comment is thanking Jim and Maris for inspiring kids by getting them to draw airplanes and spacecraft instead of bowls of fruit.
Hey, fruit's important. You know, nobody wants to get scurvy.
So we have another live chat tomorrow. We hope you will tune in at 1 o'clock. We will be talking. We're going to go backwards. We're going to be talking about the Wright brothers. We will have Tom Crouch, who wrote The Bishop's Boys and is one of our retired curators. And we will also have the great-great-grandnephew of Orville and Wilbur Wright, Keith York, who's great. Next week, we will be talking about the SpaceX crew launch. We will have Wayne Hale, the flight director in mission control for 41 space shuttle missions, and NASA astronaut Alvin Drew, who we appreciate brought Discovery back home safely and is now at the Hazy Center. I want to thank you all again for joining us, especially to Mary, Jim, and Maris. The book is Astronauts, Women on the Final Frontier. It's a really terrific middle school geared graphic novel, and it was great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're
It was
welcome.
a pleasure.
Thank you.